I think mine was
A lot can
40 at
happen.
40. That was like, so 40 mil at 40. That was probably like my like 10 and 10, you know, like
Okay.
a round number. I was like, is it realistic? Like maybe not. You know, but for me, it's probably not a huge driver.
No.
It might happen, but if
Right.
it doesn't, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And I don't want
40
to.
by 40. A big thank you to IHF Health Club for supporting this episode. Hello and welcome to the 10 Million in 10 Years podcast. I'm David, your host, and I'm joined by Simon Rolland this afternoon. Welcome.
G'day, how's it going?
Good, very good. Thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time. We were just talking before the record button got pressed, and we we're just saying about what you do, Aurora Financial, amongst other things. I guess one recognisable thing around Aurora is the branded Teslas. If you're in Christchurch, you may have seen those around.
No, we decided to buy 20 of them. I'm not sure why the number 20, but we were like getting lots of demand from the staff saying, hey, we want company cars. And obviously we were thinking, you know, there's potentially a good branding opportunity here, and also just a good opportunity to take 20 petrol cars off the road and replace it with 20 EVs. So yeah, that was an interesting moment, walking into the Tesla showroom and saying, oh, you know, how much for a car? All right, I'll take 20.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, huh? But the funny thing was we didn't get a single dollar off, not one discount, and they showed up dirty. And I was like, this is not what I expected to feel.
No love.
Yeah, no love at all. Like,
Wow.
but anyhow, no, it was good. So yeah, you especially in Christchurch, because I think there's 10 here.
Oh yeah.
So if you're in the Christchurch CBD, you'll see them all the time. But I'll get texts randomly, like, or photos of, I just spotted one of your cars somewhere and just spotted the other one. So, yeah, no, it was actually a really good move. The staff love it. It's good brand recognition, and they're actually just great cars. Like, I'm lucky enough. I got to drive one for a couple of years, and yeah, it was. I really like them.
Yeah, no, they're all good. I've got one as well, and have only recently-ish got it, but so far so good. Yeah. So you've got some big, exciting news.
Yeah. So obviously it's public information now. So at the end of the financial year, I've exited my position in Aurora Financial. So people don't know Aurora Financial if they're not driving around Christchurch and spotting Teslas. We're a financial advisory firm, so we basically help clients with their insurance, mortgage, and KiwiSaver advice. And that was a company I set up. Aurora Financial I actually set up 5 years ago, and that was kind of the second generation or the second version of another business I set up a couple of years before that. It's been probably technically a 5, but more like an 8-year journey. It's come to an end of its cycle with me, and so recently have sold the business to some new owners, and it's pretty cool.
Wow. And so is there a workout period, or are you?
Yeah, I'm on call for 12 months, but the business already runs without me, and because it comes with a competent management team. It just ticks over nicely. So, I'm on call for 12 months. So if either the shareholders or the new owners need me for anything, I'm available. It was pretty much just hand over the keys and we'll not quite sail off into the sunset, but definitely call it a day for that business.
Wow, very exciting. Was that the intent when you set it up, or was it something that came out of the blue? Or?
Oh no, 100%. No, every business I'm involved in is to start, scale, and then sell.
Right, gotcha.
So no, it was it was a 5 to 7 year push, and arguably you could say it took 8 years. I say COVID delayed the sale by a year, but it was definitely designed that way.
Yeah, gotcha. And I guess that is reflected in your LinkedIn title / bio, right? You've got the VC in there.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, I'm an investment banker. That's what I've been doing for the last sort of 5 years. And part of that sort of, I call it VC. It floats in between the angel VC and almost into the private equity space, but essentially, I like to invest in businesses, scale businesses, and then sell them. So I think Aurora Financial is my third exit now, which is cool, and I've got a few more businesses in the portfolio that I'm currently growing, and hoping to get them sold in the next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, right. And do you do that individually, or do you have a team around you?
So that's just me.
Yep.
Yeah. So I essentially manage a private family office.
Yep.
And within the family office, probably 25% of the assets are businesses, and the rest being property and commercial property, and I do a bit of private credit as well. So I think it's about 25% of the portfolio is actively invested in 6, soon to be 7 companies.
Right.
But Aurora Financial was the biggest one.
Right.
And that's been sort of the backbone or cornerstone investment for us for the last 5 years. But no, pretty happy with how it went, and yeah, it was a fun ride.
A big thank you to Casbolt's Motorcycle for sponsoring the podcast, authorised dealer of Ducati and Honda motorcycles.
Yeah, right. Wow. Any emotion around leaving it, or is it just purely a financial instrument?
No, that's a really good question, because a lot of people go, "Oh, it's your baby." I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
It was absolutely started. Every decision was made on what pumps up the EV, enterprise value.
Yeah.
And all decisions were made. Who's going to write a check, why they're going to write a check, when are they going to write a check, and how do we make that check as high as possible. Yeah. So no, it was just kind of if anything, it was a good almost case study of what to do,
right.
And obviously work out a few mistakes made along the way, but I definitely more used it as a case study for creating a blueprint of how I want to interact with businesses moving forward.
And what that next part of your journey looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And like which parts I liked, which parts I enjoyed, which parts I still want to learn more, what parts I don't want to do anymore, or,
Yes.
And hopefully stay away from a few traps that are out there. But no, yeah, so it was a really good experience.
Do you think that some things are inevitably going to take a certain amount of time? Like you spoke about that exit window at the beginning, but do you think there is any way to speed that up considerably, or is it just time?
Yeah, I think you do have to have time. There's just certain things that just can't exponentially grow, even if you throw money at it necessarily that quickly. Yes, there's unicorns, but I'm not interested in unicorns. I'm interested in just realistic results. But certain things, and even when you go to sell something, right? When you're selling a business, they're not going to give you the multiple you want based off last 3 months being really good, or last 6 months, or even last year, right? True. You need to see a bit more sustainability. And then a lot of people also build businesses, but build them around themselves, right? Yeah. And that's not a business. Like I see lots of guys who think they're business owners, but they're not. They're self-employed. Yeah, true. And there's a huge difference. Totally. So for me, no, it was, I don't know where I was going with that one, but yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, got I
was going somewhere.
Yeah,
interesting. When you're exiting or placing value, is the recurring revenue much
depends on the
higher?
industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always get scam alert when people start talking to me about ARR and all that stuff.
Right.
But it depends on the nature of the business. If it's a tech business, okay. If it's a SaaS business, let's talk. And ARR often gets thrown at just revenue. If someone signed up and it's a year-long contract, instantly it's ARR, and it's like, well, it's got to be recurring revenue, not just, a contract.
A 12-month deal, yeah.
Yeah. But again, all horses for courses, right? So, definitely recurring revenue growth rates come into it, size of the market comes into it, and what are you actually buying? Are you buying service business, product business? Lots of factors go, and like business isn't art, it's not a science, right? So you can't just go, every business is worth X times multiple.
Totally.
There's a million other factors that go into it.
Yeah.
And I've been through the capital raising phases of businesses where you've got to value something that doesn't make $1, and you've got to value something that doesn't even have a client. Yet you can't value it at zero, because then you're getting no money in the door. But
yes.
How far out can you push that envelope before you're just taking the piss?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it's an interesting one, isn't it? There's the psychology as well, and plus the fact of when you're selling anything, it's what's that saying about a ready and willing buyer, or the fact that it's worth what someone is willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that may make sense or it may not make sense.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people out there at the moment, especially the older demographic, who are holding on to these businesses, thinking that, they're worth quite a bit more than what they are, and realising that actually there's not many buyers out there who have access to capital and at a cheap enough rate that the business makes sense. So I think you're going to see a lot of businesses coming up for sale that aren't getting the multiples they used to get.
Right.
So for me, it's a good time, right? I think there's a lot of good opportunities out there. And I think now with the economy where it is and where it's going, it's a lot of the hot air is getting taken out of things, and for me, that's a good thing.
There could be some opportunities coming.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
And just peeling back on valuations, being a bit more realistic on things. I've met all the founders who've got an idea, and they only need 1% of the market, and if we get 1% of the market, we're billionaires. Gosh. And I'm like, next.
It's a bit naive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think there'll be a surge of businesses for sale / changing hands with the baby boomers?
Yeah, 100%.
Becoming of age of retirement?
100%. Yeah. The boring boomer business is and I'm actually on DD on one of them at the moment.
Right.
Because they're just going, hey, the guy who works for me can't afford to buy me out because you didn't pay him enough.
That's right.
But there's no one else who wants this job.
Yes.
Because it's not sexy, it's not cool, it's not, you can't get on your LinkedIn and go, hey guys, I'm part of a so-and-so startup. It's hey, we manufacture something in in an industrial estate.
Totally. Yeah.
The fact that it might be making $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year is almost irrelevant.
Yes.
Right? Which is, what does that tell you?
Yeah. It just screams opportunity to me.
It does. Yeah.
And then if you can put a modern slant on that business, systems, marketing wise, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Boring boomer businesses. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently on that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, and that same thing came up, which is one of the reasons I brought it up. But
and it's going to be the same thing with housing too, right? Like, I don't know about your parents, but my parents live in a 4+ bedroom house that my brothers couldn't afford to buy, right? So that next generation can't afford to buy my parents' house, and that's just the nature of the market where it's gone. But if there's enough people who go, well, no one can afford to buy the house at that, then you're going to see the house prices come back down.
Yeah.
So hasn't happened to the extent me and a few mates are expecting, but give it some time, and I think the housing market isn't going to be where fortunes are made over the next 5 years, 10 years.
I guess it's the economic curve, isn't it? The supply demand curve.
Yeah. Well, that's the only thing that we keep telling us that props up an asset that should be depreciated somehow keeps going up. But yeah. But
it's a good point, isn't it? Yeah. It is really losing value in a material sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's aging, it's depreciating.
Yeah.
But I guess the land goes up.
Yeah, you could argue that land goes up, right? Because not making any more land. But hopefully not. But I think property and that sort of aging demographic, it plays a lot more into what's happening than people realise. Actually, we were talking before, right, about podcasts, and one of the guys I do really like is Peter Zeihan. Do you know him?
Peter Zeihan, no.
Yeah, he's an American. He's an American kind of geopolitical commentator. So he's really into demographics and how demographics influence supply and demand, business, and the flow-on effects of that. So he's a really interesting guy. He's a little bit doom and gloom for most people, right. But he's called a lot of things and got them right. And I don't think enough people take into account demographics when they're looking at investments. And he's all over that, and that's his space. So I like to get a balance of what he's saying. He's a pretty global citizen for an American,
right?
Which you don't often get. So it's kind of refreshing to get an American accent, but going, actually, I know where other countries are outside of North America.
That's right.
So he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but there's a reason why that cliche exists, right? Yeah, in some cases.
Definitely not in all, but in some cases for sure.
Yeah, totally. We were talking about Switzerland before too.
Yeah. Switzerland's my favourite country for sure, and it's actually somewhere where I look to quite often for how should a country be run, right? Like Switzerland, it's low taxes, very much they value privacy, they value education, it's and standard living is where you go. If you want the highest standard of living in the world, you move to Switzerland, and I think New Zealand could learn a lot from the Swiss. So for me, I'm quite often looking there, but trying to think how would that apply here or how would that improve here. It's one of the few countries that I can go to candidly explain what I do for a job and people understand.
Right.
You know, you get,
Right.
no offense, but here in New Zealand, if I actually told people what I really did, they just have no idea what that means. But you can go to a bar in Zurich and say, oh, I do this, this, this. And they're, oh, cool. Yeah. How do you find this, this, and that?
Right.
And it's kind of like, oh, that's refreshing. Yeah.
Do you think that's based on its geography and in proximity to other markets? And the fact that New Zealand's all the way down in the south?
I think New Zealand's a young country, so that's
True.
one.
Yeah.
Geography, yes, we're absolutely on the other side of the world, so you can't just drive to another economy. You've got to ship everything here. But I also just think their values, you know, it's a country built on banking,
Yes.
built on finance, built on sort of the mentality of neutrality as well, which actually has played in their favour over the last 150 years.
Yeah.
So I just think all those little things combined have just, and you know, and I could be a bit because I'm in Zurich, which is basically, you know, the financial hub of, well, Zurich and Geneva, but they're both financial hubs. So probably my impression of Switzerland's probably a little bit skewed because I predominantly hang out in Zurich.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, do you feel like more at home almost there than...
Yeah, I
in some
can.
ways?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, two places I like to live is Switzerland and South Island. So, yeah, that's where, I sort of feel more at home.
Interesting.
I don't feel at home in somewhere like Wellington. Like I go
Right.
to Wellington and
No.
I hate it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really my mentality.
Yes.
And that's fine. I don't have to live there, so
No,
you
that's
know.
right.
I like Wellington, should exist, but it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, totally.
And probably, definitely Switzerland for me feels like home, and it's just nice, right? Like it's just everything's clean, everything works, and you look at things and just go, someone intelligent has thought about this.
This is well done.
This is well done.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Swiss get in trouble because, you know, they're neutral. Oh, they didn't support something, or they did support something. But for me, I'm kind of going, overall, it's worked out pretty
it's a
well.
smart move. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon, random question, do you think this has got anything to do with like your ancestry? Are you like...
No, I mean, all my grandparents, obviously they're all from New Zealand, but if you go back, I think 6 generations would be Scottish.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought there might have been some connection.
Nah.
back.
No, there isn't, not genetically anyway. My mum actually was an au pair in Switzerland when she was younger.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so we've had family friends from Switzerland.
Right.
But I think I just got lucky when I was there. I sort of blended in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel the same way about Canada. I lived there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I don't have any genetic relation to Canadians, but yet I feel like that's home. I feel like that's my natural home.
Which part of Canada were you in?
BC.
Oh, yeah.
British Columbia. Yeah.
I did a season at a ski resort in British Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
But funny enough, right, I was working at a ski resort with some friends. We were 19 or 20. And they loved it. It was their first time really leaving New Zealand.
Right.
But I'd already been living in Europe. And like after a month or so, I actually like left Canada and went and finished the season in Switzerland. I actually found the, I was skiing and the powder and stuff in Canada is unreal, but the vertical and the terrain in Europe is much better.
Yeah.
So, I like Canada and I've got a lot of Canadian friends and absolutely have a lot of time for it. And what I really liked about BC was how rural it gets, how like real quick.
Totally.
Like, out of Vancouver and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, almost like southern states of America. So,
Absolutely.
but good people, good genuine people that
Yeah,
help you.
totally.
And
Yeah, I did a ski season in Europe, in Andorra.
Oh, wow.
When I was probably 19, 20.
That's a tax haven.
Yeah, so similar in a way to
Yeah.
Switzerland, but really enjoyed that as well. I think it's just different, right? Like, you know, when you've been outside of New Zealand and spent time living offshore, it's just a really interesting reference point and a contrast, don't you think?
Yeah, and I think you definitely see there are lots of good points about New Zealand, but then you also notice, you know, our population's tiny. Like if you have a business, you've got 5 million customers, right? That's Sydney. Just the city. Imagine if you could only do business inside a city, right? And it's like half the size of London. So imagine if you could only do business in East and South London.
Yes.
You'd be like, why? That's such a small market. Well, that's New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
But it's also, it's cool to go what we do well, because New Zealand has some really, you know, good parts about it.
Absolutely.
And I hope it stays that way. You know, I really do.
Yeah, totally. We were just talking at IHF before, and we were just hanging out there, and I feel like that's almost like an isolated part of the community in a way, right? Like it's
Yeah.
maybe not a true representation of New Zealand, but it's sure is a group of like-minded people for the most part, wouldn't you say? Like similar
Yeah.
values, similar interests.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming. I mean, obviously you've got to pay to be there, right?
Yeah.
And so that's
It's a filter, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to value A, the facilities, B, the community and all parts about IHF. If you're going to put, I think it's probably 2 or 3 times the cost of its nearest gym.
Yes.
I mean, I actually don't know what it costs, but so that means if people are going, I'm going to put my money into this rather into something else, that's a conscious choice, and that definitely filters to who shows up. But it's not a pretentious place. Like,
no, not at all.
I go to a similar gym in Auckland, and that's way more wealthier.
Yes.
Like the car park at that gym is a lot nicer than the car park here, but it's an older demographic, right? We're here, well, at least the time slots I go, that's sort of 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a younger demographic, and they all seem to be people who are looking to get ahead and make the most of the situation and most of life and do cool things. So
totally.
I guess that's how we met, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, sauna chat.
Yeah.
And then a couple of the Aurora guys go to the gym as well. So there's that constant. What would be the word? Like, I guess exposure, or like it's a community, I guess. And so whether it's seeing the Teslas in the car park or running into some of the team, like it's it's interesting.
And they're good people, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I love
such
good
people.
Yeah, I love our team down here. Like Christchurch is definitely my favourite office. We've got offices in Wellington. We were talking about Wellington earlier.
Poor old Wellington's getting the bash here.
I know. I go there once a quarter, and I'm like, that's good.
Thank you.
So we've got Auckland, Wellington. We've even got Brisbane.
Oh yes, that's right.
Brisbane's a new one, so which was quite a cool thing. But for me, the Christchurch office is just great. Good people. It's a cool office, cool location. And a lot of them come to IHF.
Yeah. I was going to mention about that actually. I totally forgot how you guys. How did that go about, the Brisbane thing?
Yeah. So 2 things that I guess have been factors into that. Maybe 3 or 4 actually, if I think about it in more detail. But a lot of our staff members, or a lot of the staff members at Aurora Financial, were the kind of late 20s, maybe getting onto early 30s, and a lot of them over the last couple of years had kind of, like a few people, sort of seen New Zealand take a turn for the worst. The standard of living wasn't as good, the New Zealand dollar is now worth nothing, and the weather hasn't been that good either. It's just been raining and raining and raining. So we had a lot of staff who are going, we want to go out of New Zealand, we want to spread our wings, we want to have an overseas adventure, we want to do some sort of an OE, but they don't want to leave the company. So they go, we love the job, we love what we do, but we're not loving, funny enough, they mainly came out of the Wellington office, again bashing Wellington. I'm sorry, Wellington. But they just said, the weather's not good here, we want to see what another country's like. And then one of them came to us and said, hey, I'd love to set up an office in Brisbane. Are you open to this idea? And and this actually comes back to sort of one of my sayings was, COVID opened more doors than it closed. It closed some doors for sure, but it opened more than it closed. And in financial advising, pre-COVID, it was all face-to-face, 100%.
Totally.
If you said to me, we're going to have advisors that only sell via video calling, I'd say, no way.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And
then suddenly,
here
it's
we
the
are.
only way.
Yes.
It's the only way of doing it.
Yeah.
So that allows the opportunity that you can sit in an office offshore. They're all Kiwis and stuff, and they're all trained here and, still part of the team. But, if I'm sitting in Auckland, they're sitting in Wellington, or they're sitting in Christchurch, or they're sitting in Brisbane, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, totally.
So that opportunity has come up, and I think 7 or 8 of them have gone across, and they're setting it up. And, it's sort of how we started the business originally in Auckland, then within 6 months we were in Christchurch, and then Christchurch spawned Wellington spawned Brisbane. So why not? If people want to go there, they want to stay a part of the company, stay part of the dream, then cool.
Absolutely.
We just made it work for them.
Yeah, I thought when I heard about that transition from one of the guys, I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. But then I went over to Brisbane last November, and I hadn't been to Brisbane for many years, and I instantly understood why.
Yeah.
I just loved it. I really felt the good, positive, and I just felt a good vibe.
Yeah.
The weather was great, people were great, service was great. was just a lot of economic prosperity. It seemed like there was construction, just a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got our investment team for the KiwiSaver business sits in Sydney.
Right.
So I have to go to Sydney, once every 3 months, and again, things are happening, positivity, good weather. And like growing up, I've never really seen Australia as a better place than New Zealand. I've always actually I've always had the option. Right? I could always get on a plane and move to Australia, but for me, I'd actually prefer New Zealand. But now, the first time in my life, I'm like, Aussie, I can see why some people would like Australia. And it's hard to compete with, right? They've got a government that's more pro-business. The weather plays nicely into their hands. And then they've got the population size where, there's things happening.
Yeah.
We go to a restaurant on a Tuesday night, it's packed.
Totally.
As much as that sucks to get a booking,
yes.
It's actually cool when you're there and things are going. And, and there's a bit of atmosphere. So, Brisbane's the same.
We were talking about that last night with turning tables and how like you maybe go to a restaurant in Sydney and you've got an hour and a half window, and it's like it's because that's what it's like. They do turn tables and it's not like a quiet thing like here in Christchurch. But pros and cons, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I've still got no interest in moving to Sydney, but I appreciate it more than probably I used to.
Yeah, I lived there once when I was a bit younger. Did a summer on Bondi Beach. It was a good time.
As like a lifeguard or?
No, just not on the beach working, but
Yeah.
I was working in demolition actually. It was quite a random experience. I was working like night shift demolition at the MCL Tower. Do you know where it is?
Yeah.
Downtown Sydney there.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's a crazy thing. Like it was the top floor or top 2 floors, and they were totally ripping out this interior executive level fit out because it was like 18 months old.
Yeah.
And because it was such prime real estate.
They don't mess it around.
You couldn't have that possibly dating, right? So someone had to rip it out.
That's changing now though, right? With the work from home, people needing less and less commercial space.
Well, that's it.
But I know in Sydney, they're saying you've got to be in the office 4 days a week.
Right.
So the biggest day for traffic is a Tuesday morning, and the most common day to work from home is Friday.
Right.
Yeah. But the people who thought their job was going to be remote forever and moved hundreds of kilometres away,
right.
Unfortunately, that probably wasn't a wise decision.
No.
And for me as well, I mean, like I often work from home in the afternoons. But, if you've got a company and you've got people, you need to be around them.
Totally.
Maybe not 24/7, but you still need to be around to have influence.
Yes.
So I think it's just getting that balance right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I was reading the Elon Musk book. I don't know if you've read that at all.
No.
He's talking about when he goes into Twitter and it's quite what's the word for the culture where it's like all snacks and perks and work from home and nobody's feelings are getting hurt. And it's quite that sort of culture.
Yeah, it's all good when it's cheap money and somebody else is paying for it. But the reality is that's not always going to be viable.
That's right. Yeah.
I've read Peter Thiel's book, his ex-business partner, who's actually technically a New Zealander, has a New Zealand passport. Yeah. And that was a good book, but no, I haven't read Elon Musk's book.
Yeah.
I bought Teslas, right? Everyone thinks I must be a big Elon Musk fan if I bought Teslas. I was like, I think the guys are right, but like...
It's just a car.
Yeah. I was like, it's a car and you don't have to pay for fuel and it's good for the environment, so...
Totally.
And they're fun to drive, so why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the next couple of years look like for you? You mentioned potentially due diligence on another business.
Yeah.
Growing the portfolio.
Yeah. So essentially now, my part-time gig is now my full-time gig. So I sort of, I've set up a family office. So family office, do you know what a family office is?
No, I was going to ask you.
It's not such a common term here in New Zealand. It basically means a business that manages the assets of a normally wealthy family.
Right.
So for me, that kind of entails, managing property portfolio, private credit, private equity, and I do my consulting out of that business. So essentially, you're just managing the assets of one family,
right?
And that can be a wide range of assets, like the few I've just mentioned. And so, as part of that, and really under the private equity arm of the business, we've invested in I think 6, soon to be 7 companies. So buying sort of 1 to 20% of companies, early stage generally.
Yeah.
And investing in them, and then actually just helping them go on the same trajectory that a few of the other businesses have, which is grow, and then all the businesses I've invested in have a vision to sell. So we're sort of going, how do we prep it, how do we scale it, and then how do we get it sold?
And are they all of different sizes?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. There's one's got no revenue, other one's got a couple million, so they're in that sort of space. None of them are like raw financial size, but all of them want to be that sort of size. So yeah, no, they're all in that. I think the biggest one has 25 employees.
Right.
Probably average has 9. Average would be about 9 or 10 employees. That sort of size where, they're still small enough that you can have influence, and they're still cheap enough that you can get a decent slice of them. But generally, it's working with that owner, founder, CEO to help guide them through that next phase of their business journey.
I love it. How good. What is the downside with that, with venture capital or private equity, or that model essentially of buying minority shares and working with them to grow? It
is risky, right? At the end of the day, if the founder that you've invested in or the business model you've invested in isn't quite what you thought, it is high risk, right? It's not for mum and dads. It's not for people who don't understand the risks. So for me, I try to stay as close to my skill set as possible, keeping it in the sort of financial space, with a little bit of variance just for learning and excitement. But it's a high risk game, and you've just got to be prepared. So for me, I'm quite into that space, and that's where I feel comfortable, but it's still only 20-25% of my portfolio, right? So if all of it fell over and all of it went to dust, I'd still, I don't have a mortgage, I'd be fine, but I could start over, I guess you could say. But to be in that sort of space, it's not easy to get there, especially in a reasonable time. Often it's kind of people who are in their 55, 60, 65 who have got the capital to go into this space. I'm just quite lucky I was able to do it in my 30s. So it's high risk, and already I could tell you out of the 6 or 7 businesses, I could name the top 2 or 3 that will definitely be the biggest return for the portfolio,
right? And
I could already name probably the bottom 2,
right?
And some of them I'm only 6 months in,
right?
But that's okay. I knew that going into it, and I'd be lying if I thought every business I'm going to invest in is going to be awesome,
Totally.
So,
is it the what's that saying? The horse or the jockey?
I don't know that saying. Yeah.
You know what I mean, though, right? Is it the business, or is it the operator, like the owner, founder, main person, or is it the specific business itself?
Yeah, I'd say 80% the jockey, right? Because business is going to pivot. Business is going to have problems that you don't know about yet. COVID's going to happen. Something else is going to happen. And if that MD, that CEO, if they're not capable of solving problems that don't exist today, I can maybe help, add influence, but really you're investing for them to solve those problems. So for me, I have a criteria for investment, and do I back the founder is first. So I guess
number one. Yeah,
and then would I be a client, or will I know who would?
Yes.
And is there an obvious buyer at the end of it?
Right.
There's got to be a few questions, but first one is that person. So probably a common theme across the businesses is super smart founders.
Yeah.
Who might not be. They're not seasoned, veterans from a business perspective, but they are very good and understand their business and what they're trying to do and how.
Right, gotcha. Yeah, so they're capable. They just need a bit of polishing, maybe a bit of money.
Yeah, a bit of money, a bit of guidance normally.
Totally. Yeah, cool. I guess the difficulty is doing that due diligence, trying to get to understand them and build that relationship. Because I guess you can get the initial gut feeling on someone, but to really understand them can take time, right?
Yeah. And often, it's easy meeting someone when everything's going good. What happens when things start going bad? What happens when the pressure is too much? Having a very high tolerance to pain in a business sense is something that you can't really just say, hey, have you been in a shit situation before? How did you handle it, right?
It's a bit cliche.
So but that's also the risk, right? Is can you make that judgment call on the person that you think they're going to be okay? And I've had a founder who was getting squeezed very, very hard and wasn't wasn't turning him into the best version of himself.
Right.
So I just injected some money into the business just to say, don't worry about payroll.
Right.
You know, go home, get some sleep.
Get back to neutral.
Go back for a run and come back on Monday and then smash it. So, you know, which is sometimes you've got to do that, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Have you found a common trend amongst investable, CEOs, founders? Like, have you found like there's commonalities? Like, have you found that they are typically from, X demographic? Have they got X experience? Any common traits?
Just sort of thinking across. No, they're all sort of in that late 20s, early 30s age. They've normally done something to a relative success beforehand, and normally this is their first go at leading it and doing it themselves. Most of them are pretty intellectually high up on the scale, so masters in finance, that sort of stuff. I like to see that they've got actual real ability to sit down and get something done. So most of them would have a pretty high intellect, I guess. And I like to feel like the dumb guy in the room. I like to feel like I can happily sit next to them and they'll school me on whatever we're doing, right? Because I'm not driving the business. It's not my business. It's theirs. I guess most of them have they're pretty. I like if they can answer questions quickly, if they can think about problems rationally, and also I guess one thing now I'm thinking about it is that I like them to be really commercially minded.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people aren't. It's really hard to find commercially minded people because people, might be, I'm a really good builder, great, but they don't understand business. So it would be strange to find, a builder who's super onto it commercially. Right? I'm not bagging on builders. I'm sure there are commercial builders out there, but I want to find that person who's already got that, because that you can't teach. You can harness, but you can't really teach. So. If they don't have a good commercial sense, then I normally pass on the opportunity. Yeah,
interesting. I wonder what's next then. And how do you find opportunities? Is it through networking?
Yeah,
or is it through
networking, but also just people, I've been in business, I guess, since I was 20, right? So 15 plus years. So you just get known, people know you, you know them. And often it's contacts of contacts, make introductions, and and a couple of the businesses I've dealt with them. I've been a customer first,
right?
I've been a customer and I've seen it from that side of the equation. I've gone, hey, are you interested in having an investor?
Yes.
And, suddenly absolutely, come around, and that way as well. That sort of DD is already being done, right? I've seen it from the other side.
Exactly.
I've seen how they've handled things. I've seen that. But it's something I want to improve on, right? So, part of doing it, I'm going to business school in Switzerland next month to do a venture capital course.
Wow.
Just to kind of sharpen my blade in the venture capital space. We'll see where it leads.
Exciting times. What's that? Just a random question.
Then I want to hear about your 10-year, 10 million.
10-year, 10.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
10 years, yeah.
Because it's quite a. I like goals that have nice round numbers, so I'm all for that. But it's not often here in New Zealand people put their head out and go, "Hey, I want to achieve something that's, pretty ambitious." Not many people have a $10 million, and I assumed it was a $10 million net worth.
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. So you want to have assets.
Yeah.
That are 10 million higher than your liabilities.
Yeah, and 10 million higher than my current,
that was my other question.
Net wealth at inception.
Okay, so it's plus 10 on top of what it was beforehand.
Yes,
if you had a $9 million net worth, getting to 10 in 10 years is probably going backwards.
That's right. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I was turning 38, I think it was, and often birthdays are a time to reflect, to assess where you're at. And so I was looking at my my career, my history, and I was like, okay, I've done some different things. I've lived in a couple of countries, had some different businesses, and I wanted to ensure that the next 10-year chapter was, I had a bigger base, had a bit more financial assets, essentially. And so I like challenges. I've done 75 hard a couple of times. I just tend to work best if there's a time frame and a specific goal.
Okay.
And so for me, I thought, okay, a year or two, I don't think that's really enough time to
be worth 10 mil.
It's not really it's just too short, to do something meaningful. So I was like, okay, so 10 years is sort of a round number, obviously. I looked back historically 10 years and like where I was at, and I was like, okay, if I look forward 10 years, next decade, 10 million would be a number that's not crazy in my mind. Like I can conceptualize that.
Yeah.
But it's also not necessarily going to be easy. Like I have to do something a little bit more.
It's not going to happen without some effort.
It's not going to accidentally happen, right? And so that's when it was hatched, really. There was no, big planning brainstorming session on it. I just came up with it, and I guess I coupled it with my interest of creating content, and here we are on the podcast.
So how many years into the 10 years are you?
I'm about 14 months in.
Okay, yeah.
14, 15 months, yeah.
Yeah, you counted months, yeah.
Give or take.
So it's still
right?
new enough that you counted months.
It's pretty new, yeah.
It's like a new baby.
Yeah, exactly.
So 14 months old.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been tracking the balance sheet. I did that at the end of last year, calendar year. And so, as you can imagine, it's not going to be a linear journey.
Oh, shit no. Yeah.
Shit no.
Yeah. It's going to go nothing, hopefully.
The old hockey stick sales curve, on the whiteboard, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I've got a rough plan in mind.
Okay.
So
can we go into that a little bit?
Of course.
Because I'm interested in that. Like I've tracked my net worth since I was 29. So I have it like actual and forecasted up to my 40th birthday.
Right.
So I've had, and it's been quite interesting going what I thought was going to be worth something and then what actual, and having to like delete a few things, add a few things, but like it was cool kind of going, where is it at 30, where it will be at, 31, 32, 33, 35, and then I went from 35 to 40. I jumped the in between because I was kind of, I was doing this just before I turned 30. So I had detailed for 5 years and then sort of a big picture for 40.
Right.
So I'm interested. Yeah, like how does one create a $10 million net worth in 10 years? In New Zealand, in this market, in this space. What's your sort of, even just at a macro level, at a high end, what's sort of the plan?
Yeah. So when I first started it, my plan and vision was to actually do something similar-ish to the venture capital model. So I had a minority shareholding in a business locally.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this will be a tester. This will be something that I can experiment with, and then potentially multiply that into other holdings. It didn't work, so that one situation didn't really work out.
Okay.
And whether that was a combination of, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Long story. Yeah. Or short story long.
Yeah. That's business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of it doesn't work out.
And so, kind of, right? Yeah. And so that was something that I've just exited out of recently. I was in a role at that stage of creating the challenge. So I was in a paid, it was a contractor role, but essentially I was an employee.
Yeah.
And just across the road from Aurora, funny enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I took a bit of time to figure out what the plan was. I had a friend that was constantly telling me, like, you're not going to get to 10 million working at our place.
Yeah.
And it used to piss me off.
Yeah.
I used to resent him for saying it. I'm like, well, I know that, but I've got to just get my affairs in order. I've got to hatch a plan before doing anything reckless. Like, it was a decent amount of money. And so what I did...
Decent income.
Decent income. Had one property that was providing rental income. So as it stands, cash flows coming in from business coaching, which I'm doing for my primary role. Okay. Loving that.
Yeah.
And then I also have a subdivision on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah. So
on the West Coast.
So a 10-acre piece of land that's currently being subdivided.
Okay. Whereabouts on the West Coast?
Just south of Greymouth.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so, I know where Runanga is, but that's north of Greymouth.
Oh,
right?
yes.
So
yeah. How do you know Runanga?
I don't know. I've done coast to coast, so I went over to the coast for that. And I don't know why. When I was like 22, 23, I ended up staying the night in Runanga.
Wow.
Like, of all places. And it was hilarious.
Yeah.
It was the sort of place where we stayed at a motel, and the lady who runs the motel would turn on your electric blanket for you at night. So like when you got to the room, she's already been in the room and turned it on. It was just, and like you played pool with the owners, and it was $25 for the night, including breakfast.
Wow.
And I was like, I love it. Yeah.
And an electric blanket.
Exactly, yeah.
Jeez,
it's like being at home almost, you know.
You wouldn't get that in Wellington.
No. Don't get me started, yeah. But okay, so you got a development on the West Coast.
Yeah, so that's due for title late June this year.
Yeah.
So the plan is to sell off a couple of the sections.
Like Lake Brunner or somewhere?
No, just between like Greymouth and Kamara Junction.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I know exactly where that
just
is,
like
yeah.
10 minutes out of Greymouth.
Okay.
So yeah, that'll free up a bit of capital. The plan with that chunk of money, I think something around property.
Yeah.
And something to churn it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So whether that's...
I don't know anyone who's rich from property. I want to challenge you on this.
Oh, and I
Yeah.
don't really love it either, to be honest with you.
Okay,
I just
yeah.
see it as a mechanism that
Yeah.
likely will involve some form of joint venture or partnership
Okay. Yeah.
with someone in that world,
Yeah.
but to be determined.
Yeah. Okay.
In
yeah.
the short term,
Not to be a wet blanket. Yeah.
No, I mean,
yeah.
the property I've done over the years, like it's been okay, but I wouldn't
Yeah.
say it's been amazing.
None of my wealthy friends, none of them have made money none of them are wealthy because of property. None of them.
Really?
In the high end space.
Yeah, right.
A couple of guys who have all right lifestyles.
Yeah.
Have done okay in property. But I think in New Zealand, a lot of property, we only talk about the wins. We never talk about the losses. We only talk I call it the kind of barbecue investor. You know, hey, I bought this house for 50, for 500,000. I sold it for 700. I made 200 grand. It's like, well, hang on. No,
hang on a minute.
You spent 60 grand on this. You have to pay tax on that. You had holding costs. You had this. I reckon you didn't make anything.
And you put 300 hours into it.
Exactly. Yeah, more.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So I'm glad that because it's to build a 10 million, and often, like, you know, I've heard these guys, I own 10 houses. Oh, where? They're on Timaru, you know, or like Oamaru and like, you know, Invercargill and stuff. I'm like, it might keep up with inflation, but that's it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's like literally, and with interest rates being above 5%, I'm just going, man, it's just chewing your money. You're not going to get ahead doing that. And you need quite a bit too. Like it takes up a lot of your income to kick on to the next one and the next one and the next one. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, and I own property, right? Like I'm not like against it.
Yeah.
But I've never made any money from
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's funny, right, how society-wise in New Zealand it is so pro-property, right?
Yeah.
And even just the negative sentiment that you get from renting. It's
Yeah.
like, ooh, you're renting. It's like, yeah.
Well, it's linked back to Switzerland, right? So Switzerland
Yeah.
has the highest standard of living in the world. Like it's always number one, right? Zurich's
Right.
always number
It
one.
is, right?
Geneva's
Yeah.
number two.
Yes.
And on average, it's always the highest. No one, Switzerland has the lowest home ownership rates in the world, right? Okay. Do you know who has the highest home ownership rates in the world? It's another beautiful country as well called Romania.
Oh, right.
Right?
Interesting.
But I don't know about you. You're going to say, Simon, where do you want to live to have a good life? Romania or Switzerland?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? I'll take Switzerland all day.
Me too.
And, you know, and but we're drummed in here in New Zealand. You're poor if you don't own a home.
Totally.
Like I was 23 when I bought my first home.
Yes.
And because I just had all this pressure, hey, you're doing well at work, you're making money, buy property. I bought this house and I'm like, I'm single, I'm 23 years old. Why am I paying for this huge mortgage to live in one room out of the 3-bedroom house?
Totally.
I was just like, the best thing I ever did was sold it. You know,
Yeah,
I just got rid of it. I was like, I don't need that yet.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not going to make me rich, you know, as much as we think it is. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of people when they say I don't own a home, but I've invested in my pension, I've invested in a business, and I'm actually quite independently doing all right.
Yes.
Without necessarily linking it back to property.
Yeah.
It's just we need to get over it as New Zealanders.
Oh,
right?
it's refreshing to hear, you know, like I was doing the autopsy of the 8 or 9 properties I've owned over my life, and you know, the first one got it when I was 19 and had it for 5 years, broke even / maybe even lost a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it doesn't even equate to time.
No.
Like time helps in some instances, but not always.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at the breakdown on the other ones and a couple of them did okay. One did well because it was a new build and timing was right. But
cool.
A lot of them were neutral.
Yeah.
And maybe that's through user error, not holding them long enough. But I guess at the end of the day, for me, I just look at renting and look at that ratio between rent cost and property value. It just, in my mind, it makes sense. So,
well, I'm saying it doesn't make sense, meaning it doesn't make sense to buy
as an investor. Yeah.
Like, no, it's an interesting thing because I mean, to get to a $10 million net worth, right, you're going to have to attack multiple assets, right, and hope that one's a screamer without just reloading debt and reloading debt and reloading debt. Like for me, the realistic way of making 10 mil in 10 years is starting a successful business.
Yeah.
Right? You might, like, I was quite lucky while growing my businesses. I was able to park a bit of money into property on the side and park into a few other little assets. But, you know, I was thinking about it today, knowing that we're going to talk about this, and I'm thinking, as a percentage, probably 75% of my net worth would be because of business. And I only have the other 25 because of business, right?
Yes, right.
Like, like it really is just like, yes, you should have your KiwiSaver. KiwiSaver is super important, but it's not going to make you worth 10 mil.
No,
right?
No. I mean, my primary thing is really just going all in on the coaching consulting business. So although it's new, I feel like this is the thing I'm gonna.
Do you see yourself like expanding the business?
Yeah.
Okay. And sort of creating a brand and a model and
exactly.
All that?
Yeah. So at the moment, it's largely one-to-one coaching, which is reliant on my time. It's great, love it. But next year, the plan is to move more into a consultancy and create something that's scalable and can grow beyond myself. So
that's exciting.
It's not entirely 100% planned out, but roughly. I guess where I'm going is that's the focus, and that's where the effort and energy is going to go over the next 10 years, or 8.7.
Whatever that is. You start counting it at months again.
As well as that chunk of money from the property either being used. In the short term, it'll just go into a short-term term deposit, so it's making 5 or 6% or whatever, just parked, creating some revenue to at least break even above inflation, but and then likely some kind of joint venture or collaboration with someone in property, I think, but I've got a few months to figure that out.
And what happens if you don't do it? What's what's the
challenge?
What happens if you get to $8 million net worth in 10 years? Will you be sad? Will you be angry? Will you be how much does it mean to you?
I think it would depend a lot on the process. I think that's a bigger part to me is how I get there. Like I have no doubt that if I really wanted to get to the 10 mil at all costs, I could do that. I'd probably go and sell some financial product. Realistically. I don't know anyone worth 10 million who sells financial products. But you know what I mean.
You'd have to do something. Become high ticket.
Become very good at sales.
And
then funnel that into. I don't know, just talking out loud. But the point is, it's more about the journey to get there. And for me, it's about having some form of balance and doing something that I love. But it's really about documenting it and hopefully getting to it or close to it.
I just hope by the time your 10 years is up that the New Zealand dollar is worth something, right?
That'd be nice.
Because 10 million New Zealand dollars at the moment is not a lot. Like it sounds like a lot, and it should be a lot, and I wish it was a lot, but it's the last 6 years the dollar's just dive, and if you go overseas, like you like to and I like to, you get there and you go and pay for something, and like we used to think New Zealand was expensive, right? New Zealand used to be expensive. Now it's half price. So every time I'm buying something, I just divide it by 2, and that's what it is in US dollars or euros or Swiss francs, and I'm like, oh, that's not so bad. And my Swiss mates, when they come here, they think New Zealand's the cheapest thing ever.
It's like Thailand.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like literally, it's like Thailand. And for me, that as a proud Kiwi, that crushes me. Like we used to be this, like the small country that punched well above its weight. And I want to get New Zealand back to, punching well above its weight. And if we're going to have millionaires and what's a 10 millionaire person called?
Decamillionaire, maybe?
Decamillionaire, multi,
Multi, I don't know.
Find out if there's a term for that.
Should
that
really
would be
know
cool.
that.
Yeah, if you're going to become one, you should know what it is, right?
That's right.
Hey, I'm a decamillionaire. Yeah. What does that mean? 10 million.
I think it starts with tiny changes though, and creating content and bringing these types of topic to the forefront. Having these chats. Like money's not bad. Like that's something that a lot of people struggle with. The negative mindset around talking about money, and I just see it as a tool. It's
and that's that attitude in New Zealand needs to change, right? Like it's okay to say, oh, how much do you earn? It's not because I'm judging you. No. It's because I'm interested, and maybe that's a good avenue for me to follow, or maybe not. if it's all hush taboo, you're like, well, we're never going to get ahead unless we start talking about it.
That's
so I
right.
think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And who knows, you might, like you mentioned that 75 hard challenge. People might be signing up for the 10 and 10 challenge, right?
Well,
they join you. They're just 14, 15, 16 months behind you.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And you get a whole crew of people who are going, who wants to be worth 10 more
How cool
mil?
would that be?
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's one of my hopes, and one of the reasons for creating content is just to create a bit of positivity, and it's a talking point,
Yeah.
I don't know if it will create anyone to go on a different trajectory, but I mean, it could. And I like having conversations like this, and in fact, this has reignited my passion in the podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking just before today, actually, I was like, I've been doing this for 110 episodes, and it's great and all.
Yeah.
It's cool, but there's opportunity cost with everything, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like I could be selling more consulting right now.
Yeah.
Or I could be, we've all got different choices, but for me, it's really cool having conversations like this and to get a different perspective. So,
with your consulting business, and like I'm an investor in a consultancy, right? So I've recently come on as chairman and as lead investor in this consultancy business, and I challenged the CEO, going, do we sell service or do we sell product, right? Because it's not always clear. Yes, charge by the time, but do we really? Because when you're dealing with a business, right? Like the pitch for the business is, we solve hard business problems with technology. That's what the business, can I plug it? Mission intelligence. That's what mission intelligence do, right? And they're a breakaway from PwC,
right?
Hyper smart, finance guys, and but they start off being like, we're consultants. So we sell time, right? You'll pay us for the amount of time it takes to solve your hard business problem through technology, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm challenging them going, yeah, but really business owners like myself are coming to you going, I have a problem. I need a product. I need a solution, right? I don't want to necessarily just be charged time.
No.
I want to actually know how much, when, what do I get, what does it look like, and can I hold you accountable to that?
Totally.
So we're having this kind of just like growth phase in the business of just going, when are we consultants and when are we actually, selling solutions / products? So
totally. Yeah.
So I'd be interested to know, so you at the moment with your consulting business, how would you sort of view yourself?
Well, at the moment, it's more coaching than consulting, but I definitely see it more as a value-based offering, in that it's not just so much time-based. I see it as more of a offering around, like where are we trying to get to? What are we working on? And I guess that is, I've never really liked the time billing model.
Yeah.
When I had the agency, it was like one of those dilemmas, right? With charging for, say, graphic design, it's like, well, here's the hourly rate. It's going to take 5 or 6 hours. It's like, well, does it really matter how long it takes? They want a logo done. And it's one of those dilemmas, and I think we're probably evolving, wouldn't you say? Like society's moving more and more away from billable time.
I'd like to think
hourly,
so.
I guess, in some ways. But it's still a core metric and a core way that it's sort of values measured in certain industries. So I had a podcast with a lawyer recently. We're talking about AI and how that affects them.
Well, they can read the documents a lot quicker. They can draw up contracts quicker. I think AI, probably legal, will be one of the industries most disrupted by it, right?
Massively.
I think that's going to be a huge. I mean, even us, internally with certain contracts, we'll just go on ChatGPT and get it drawn up. Maybe get our actual lawyers to do a once over, but now it's 15 to 45 minutes of their time rather than 3 or 4 hours to give us a template.
Really interesting, right? I think that'll probably shift a lot of industries, and the funny thing to me is that it's not the industries that once were thought to be at risk, right? Like the creative services, everyone thought that was going to be something that was going to be wiped out, but yet they're even more in demand now.
No, it's true. But staying ahead of that curve, right? Kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's next, what's coming, and I guess that's probably part of the business coaching you do, is keeping sure those businesses aren't getting left behind, right? They aren't becoming, old and stagnant, and needing to catch up. So there's definitely a couple of different cohorts that I tend to work with, and they're the younger entrepreneurs that are doing well, like they're profitable, they're making money, but they're also potentially unaware of what could happen and what could bring them down, or hurdles that could arise.
And it's not to be negative, it's just to be like, hey, look, like things happen, you know. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You've had a good ride, but
I mean, it's like when you meet people like myself, right? I started my first real job in financial services in 2008. So I started right in the middle of the GFC.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
all I'd known up until 2 years ago was up.
Right.
Everything's gone up. My whole, like, nothing's ever gone down. And then, you know, so me and my business partner, we set up a KiwiSaver funds management business, right? And, you know, when we launched, literally that day, market started tanking and tanking and tanking. And it's the worst time because people go, hey, you know, we want to join your KiwiSaver. What are your returns? And we're like, well, we're down -11. Hey, our colleagues are down -12, so you know, we're doing okay. But
we're not that bad.
But it's not as easy as going, hey, we set up in 2008 and then we're up 30%.
Absolutely.
Everyone else is up 30% and maybe even more, but it doesn't have that same ring to it, right?
That's right.
So timing can be, you know, pretty harsh. And yeah, a lot of business owners, a lot of young business owners, they haven't really, and traditionally in New Zealand, we get off lightly, right? Like the GFC, unless you're a farmer or had a shitty finance company, you're fine, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, in New Zealand we get off pretty lightly, but I think this time we've been probably hit a bit more, and I think the double whammy of a downward market, COVID, it's just sort of doubly hit us, and obviously having a government that just hates business owners. So that was just like on 2 or 3 kicks in a row. Yes. But preparing for that's great advice to young business owners, right? And just saying, hey, it looks like it's going really good now.
Right.
Cool. Well, let's use a little bit of that just to prepare for when it's not. And hey, if the bad times never come, great.
You're good, yeah. With a few of them, funny, you mentioned KiwiSaver, like, with the offering, like, it's mostly business focused, but I do like to take a well-rounded approach because I think life is more than business, you know. So if like your health's not in order or you're not physically doing very well, then of course that's going to bleed into your business, right?
Of course,
But where I was going with that, though, is the KiwiSaver compounding calculator. It is crazy, isn't it, how you can see what happens after, say, 40 years of compounding at even a conservative interest rate. But just consistently putting money aside, like. That's like I once did a presentation to some people, and I just showed how if you make 60 grand a year, and like if you're a husband and wife or partners, whatever, and both of you on 60 grand a year, we can make you multi-millionaires by the time you retire. It's not actually hard. Like that's like it's a choice, right? Like it's like when people tell me, oh, I really want to buy a house. First thing I say, oh, cool, how big's your deposit? Oh, I don't have any saved. I'm like, you don't want to buy a house. No. You just want to tell people you want to buy a house, you know? And it's the same. If you actually want to be wealthy, your income isn't an excuse. It really isn't. No, it's not.
Okay, maybe if you only earn 60 grand a year and you're two years into it, okay, but are you 2 years into it, or are you still just saying, I'm only on 60 grand a year, I can't make it happen? So
that's right.
So it's I don't know, I kind of always test people on when they're saying sort of things like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think like if you can just get started, and that's the advantage of younger people, is that they've got time on their hands. And so, you know, I mean, you know, the sort of the gig, right, with those calculators, but you know, even if it's a small amount, just get started.
Well, it's funny talking of that, like my dad always used to make fun of me because he'd always say, oh, according to Excel, you should have been rich a long time ago, because, you know, you get on Excel and you go, oh, well, if it just keeps going this way, and again, the hockey stick sort of thing, you're like, oh, cool. But yeah, that was kind of funny.
It's all about like where we grew up too, I think. Like, you know, I was fortunate my parents were never like pro property, so I didn't really have that lens growing up.
Neither.
But they were always like huge into shares.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so,
really cool.
They were just like the classic millionaire next door type personas.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Very, very conservative, you know, driving 15-year-old cars.
Yeah, perfect.
But just, you know, consistently put money back into a few key shares.
Wow, that's awesome.
And yeah, I mean, it sort of worked for them, right?
Yeah. No, I definitely, my parents also, I mean, they own their home, but they didn't, they don't own anything other than that. And, you know, my parents have had fairly decent middle-class incomes my whole life, but, you know, they live in West Auckland, but, you know, if the house hadn't gone up lots and lots in the last sort of 5-7 years, their retirement wouldn't be as good as it should be, right? So yeah, they were never into property, and therefore I was never really into property, and I got burnt my first sort of venture into property as well. So like when I was 25, I kind of got done over by a slippery property developer.
Oh yeah.
You know, lost everything I had,
All
and
right.
that's quite an intense learning lesson when you're 25 and you think you're getting ahead and you're doing well, and suddenly you got no money.
No doubt.
And then all your mates still think you earn lots of money, and you're going, don't look too deeply.
Not so much.
Yeah, but then meant second time coming into property, I've definitely looked at it with a different lens, and I'm a way more. Don't believe hype, don't believe anything. Look more at the expenses than the potential upside, and really look at it for its long-term value and its long-term income. But under 10 year interest in property is zero,
Funny how time can heal those wounds, right? Like at the time, that must have sucked.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. But can heal definitely for sure. But also, it does just help guide you for your next. That's learning, that's experience, and that's so. When the next too good to be true offer comes along in property, and quite often mates of mine will ring me. Like I'm normally the sounding board with most of my friends in the investment space, and it's just kind of always reverting back to that, going, I know this sounds really good, but here's the 5 reasons it's not to be a downer, but it's you've got to think about this stuff, and if you've thought about it, you're comfortable with that risk, and you're still not worried, go ahead. But I want to make sure that there's at least a bit of checks and balances before you dive deep into this great property deal that you can't lose on, and interest rates only ever go down, and house prices only go up, and it can never be wrong.
Totally. I think with some people in some circumstances there's only one way to teach or to learn the lesson, and it's through trial and error. What do you think of the theory and that concept of the 5 people you hang out with being so important? Do you take a lot in that? Do you believe in that?
Yes, high level definitely. And I think about kind of the 5 people closest to me. None of them own businesses, but all of them are, they're either good at their job. I would say they're all pretty well travelled. And they all have probably the interests would say pretty similar. But definitely, who you hang out with affects. And we have this argument, right, with, which school do you want to send your kids to? I've got people in my family who go, you go to local school and that's fine. And I'm probably on the other side of the spectrum where I'm like, if you've got the means and the ways, you should send your kids to a better school, because the people they'll meet there, not always and not definitely, but I'd rather, I've got a son, I'd rather that he mingles with people who go, actually, I want to start a business and go to London, than, I'm just going to work at the factory my dad works at, not that that's not an important and good job, but it's kind of, saying, so yes, I do think who you hang out with does affect it, but I don't think you have to hang out with other versions of yourself.
Sure.
So yes, is the short answer.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but the long answer is, there's still quite a few caveats in that, and for me, a lot of my best friends earn normal sort of wages, and
right, okay,
that's fine. We don't have to all be in business and trying to scale businesses and do all that stuff. We can just go skiing on the weekends or do other things, and
cool.
That's cool.
It's just an interesting discussion point, I find, whether it's whether you are trying to either grow revenue or grow in some way, right? It's like if you were to say hang out with 5 people that were super, athletic and muscular, right? You'd probably morph into that. Right?
Yeah. I'm sure. You've got to have some mutual interest, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking out loud here. My best friend got a good job, but he's pretty lazy from a career point of view. That's just not his thing. He earns enough that he can do what he likes, but he doesn't have any drive to go past that.
Yeah, right.
But that doesn't stop us hanging out, and I'm not like, oh, come on, man, the whole time. No, most of my best friends, they're not that ambitious from a business point of view.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes I can find guys as well who are really ambitious and whatever. For me, it's too much. I'm not here to compete with my friends. I'm not I've had mates in the past that are hell bent on winning this fake race that they're in.
Mythical race,
Mythical. At first, like we actually joked once that a friend of ours, like the old saying is whoever dies with the most wins.
Right.
And we joked on his headstone when he dies, he'd just say, I win. Like that's what's most important to him.
I won.
And I'm like, that's cool, but like that's not, I'm not going to go and have a beer with that guy. Like it's just not what I'm interested in hearing.
Yeah,
I'd rather hear your interesting theory on something in history or something like that.
Totally.
Or, some weird, quirky, hobby that you have that you don't really want to tell people about. For me, that's much more exciting. And I like hearing other people's point of views, right? Like I like having friends that are, different backgrounds, different cultures, different whatever. Because otherwise you just hear the same thing over and over, and that's not where you learn, right? You don't learn just by hearing what you already know. You learn by going, hang on, why do you think that? Shit, I'm going to go away and think about what I think about that now, and see where we end up.
That's cool. Yeah, that pauses you to stop and reassess your beliefs. Yeah,
especially if you value, like if you respect that person. Because like I've got a friend who's CEO of a big IT consulting firm, so you'd expect him to be pretty right wing, pretty like economically fiscally responsive, but he's actually really socially all my friends are quite liberal, but he's actually economically very liberal. He actually likes high taxes. He likes and I'm just like, I didn't expect you to be like this.
Right.
And then when you hear the reasons why, I'm like, that's actually a really good reason. I may not quite 100% agree with it, but that's an interesting chat to me, and that's a friend that I like to hang around with and stay in touch with.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that's the fun thing about life, and I guess maybe since spending a bit more time at the gym and just coming across different people, you can kind of develop new friendships and people that rather than like, I mean, I guess as an adult, how do you meet people? Whether it's through work or through, I guess, social things or sports or whatever. But
I mean, I like, for me, right, like for the last 10 years I've been the boss, right, and I'm the boss first and your friend second, right? And not because I don't like the people I work with or I don't think they're great, but for the sake of the business.
That's the role.
Unfortunately, I'm always the boss, and so that means you can't become super close friends with them. Well, it's very, very difficult to do that because, I've had to fire guys who I'd consider really good friends. So I've had to let them go or whatever. And, that's tough. So, where do you meet people, right? Like if you're not playing sport anymore and, if you're in a role or in a business that you just can't become, you can't become friendly with people at work and go, let's hang out and, have a few drinks together, because it's just not appropriate.
That's right.
So you've got to kind of go, where do you find your friends? And it's difficult as an adult, especially if you like move cities. Where do you start? I joined a rugby team.
Oh yeah.
So I played rugby in Zurich.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And even to today, so my wedding was last year. Basically half my friends there were from my rugby team from 15 years ago in Zurich.
Right.
And and all of us live around the world now.
Yeah.
But whenever we need to, we always get together somewhere and have a good time. But, if I hadn't had that rugby team, my networks would have been even smaller.
There's that theory about spending a certain amount of time with people. So whether it's through sports or through shared interests or workplace, connections, like the more time you spend with someone, essentially, the more likely you are to continue spending time with them. So it's like the reason why people still are friends with people they went to school with.
Yeah.
Which to me, I can't relate to. I don't really keep in touch with too many people from school. Yeah. But I can see why it is a thing.
Yeah, I actually see that as a bad thing, right? If people are only friends with people they went to school with, to me that's not a good thing.
No, it doesn't really say that you're evolving or growing necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah, like I have a few friends I went to high school with, but often it's actually, I kind of may have knew them but not close to them in high school, and it just happens that 10 years later that they've somehow re-entered my life, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's crazy when people still hang out with people that they only went to primary school with or high school with.
Yeah.
You haven't done anything since.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I see that as a red flag in people if all their friends are still from when they're in high school or when they're in primary school.
Yeah. It's cracked me up. These this is just the caveat here. No disrespect to anyone, right? But it's been funny at these last few weddings that we've been to, how like they're doing the photos and they're like, okay, so all the school friends, you guys get in the photo, and it's like school friends, like I don't know if I'd have one like school friend at my wedding, and again, it's not to say it's bad. It's just like interesting to me because I have gone through different seasons of friends and meeting. I'm always kind of curious about people, right?
Yeah.
But I just don't relate to school friends. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Rightly or wrongly.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I've got some friends from school, but definitely I wouldn't say the nucleus of my mates would be school.
Yeah.
No, it's always been probably since school and more in traveling and
Yeah.
doing other things or getting into hobbies and interests, and that's where the closer friends have come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I've noticed is with meeting new people and spending time with people and developing relationships, like if you can do something outside of the normal, like outside of say a normal coffee or a lunch or whatever, almost like the more contextual, the more different contexts you can interact, the better, and the more you can develop that relationship.
Yeah.
For example, I've got a friend that we've started playing tennis together, and so like, you've got that sort of rivalry going on. You've got the fact that you're doing something active. You got weather. You got different stuff going on, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so you sort of get to know someone's character a bit different.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I found that quite interesting. And then also like traveling. Traveled with a new friend for work recently. Same thing, like spending a couple of days together and like going out for dinner and stuff. It's just like
once the small talk's worn off, what's there?
And I'm not like a huge fan of small talk anyway. So I like to skip over that. Just having like just time together. I think it's just a volume of time.
No, I think I like to do some hobby or something with most of my friends, whether it be skiing or climbing or road trips, or there's always concerts or something. Like it's always, if I'm going to a concert, I always go with this one friend because that's what we do. We'll just go to concerts and see if we like it or not. Like,
Love it. Concert friend.
Yeah. Why not? Like, you don't want to go to a concert by yourself necessarily, though I have. I'd quite happily go to a concert.
Not afraid?
No, I mean, no one knows that I'm by myself, right? Like,
no, that's right.
No one cares, right?
Totally.
And once you realize no one cares, I think that's a lot of freedom as well. Like, that's one thing I found when traveling with younger was that, like, why do you care what someone you went to high school with, why do you care what they think? Like, do you care what they think? I couldn't care less. Like, and I think that's a lot of people do, and they really let that kind of drive, what they're into or what hobbies they chase. And I think it's quite freeing when you go, actually, I'm really into A, B, and C, so I'm going to go and do it and see if I really love it, or if it's something I want to do more and more of.
Love that.
And I think that should be encouraged, right? Is go and try something new. Go and do something you didn't just do in high school over and over, and don't just hang out with the people who tolerated you at high school, and who you were when you were younger does not have to be who you are now.
No,
right?
not at all.
And even that, like, the sort of that imposter syndrome, right? Like, I was really worried because I started my career in insurance, right? Because I was quite successful in the insurance space. That I was really worried about being like pigeonholed into being this insurance thing, and I'm like, I don't know anything about insurance. Like, I'm the last guy when you call me and have an insurance question, I'll just point you in the direction of someone. I'm not that guy.
I'll figure it out.
And so for me it was like, I was like, I don't want to be seen as just being this insurance guy, and I had to kind of push myself past worrying what people cared or what they thought or how they saw it, and actually was like, you know what, this is how I see myself, and you can see it that way or not, and if you don't, jog on,
totally.
It's my life, not yours. So but I think more people should be like that. I think more people should just go, actually, I'm really good at A, B, and C, and that's what I enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
I don't have to stay down this path. I can pivot. And pivot again if it's not quite what we want.
I love it. That's a great mindset. I think curiosity is a big thing for me, and applying that and just going in the direction that interests you. And I think it's I don't know if you've heard of the Ikigai book.
No.
It's essentially a Japanese term that refers to a set of 4 overlapping circles. So like what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can make money at, and what there's a 4th one, but it's like a sweet spot essentially.
I read a book similar. It was called Design Your Life,
right?
And it was done by these 2 lecturers from Stanford, because everyone goes to Stanford to be something, right? But a lot of people go to Stanford because that's what you should do.
Right.
And then they're studying A, B, or C, but they actually don't know what they want to do post-studying, right? So these guys invented this I was going to say course, but it's more of a way of thinking, right? And they set you through these like set of questions to actually trying to work out like, what would you do if no one's watching? What would you do if money wasn't an issue? And because a lot of people really don't know what they want to do, and if they or don't know what's possible or how to transition from where they are to what they want to do next. And I thought that was a real powerful kind of tool. And it's similar, like, like what would you do that's good for the plan? What would you do that's good for here? What would you do here? And it was just, a really cool thought exercise to go through. And so it's a book that I actually recommend to quite a few of my friends, and they say, what should I do next with my career?
Right.
I'm like, just go watch the TED Talk or read the book, and then actually work out who you are, what you want to do, and then start heading towards that.
Absolutely love it. I feel like I could definitely talk to you for a lot longer, but just not the time.
No worries.
I've
really enjoyed it.
I really appreciate it. Yeah,
I'm excited to see how you go. Every 12 months, you've got to flick me an update on the net worth.
Well, even better, the anniversary edition. I've done a couple of these now. I've done the 12-month anniversary edition with the guests, so that's quite cool. Because it gives an equal opportunity, right, to check back on where you're at in the next 12 months. Perhaps you've got an idea on where you might be, but who knows?
I think mine was 40 at 40. That was like, 40 mil at 40. That was probably like my 10 and 10, a round number. I was like, is it realistic? Like maybe not. But for me, it's probably not a huge driver.
No.
It might happen, but if it doesn't, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. And I don't want to...
40 by 40.
Yeah. So,
That could be the title, I think.
40 by 40? Yeah.
That's a good name.
Well, I'm just turned 36. I'm going 4 years. A lot could happen in 4 years, but... but again, it's like a ringy, round number.
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting. But I don't want, for me personally, it was only up to my 35th birthday that I was interested, and now since then I don't want to make that more of a priority than it needs to be. I've got like mountains I want to climb, things I want to do, and that doesn't help my net worth at all. It could be the opposite. But we'll see. But no, definitely, I'm very keen to stay in touch and very keen to see how you go. And
awesome.
Yeah, if I can help in any way, you just shout out, man. I'd be more than keen to help you if I can. And
Thank
appreciate
you
your
so
time.
much. Oh, that's so good. Really good sitting down with you. Appreciate it. And we'll see you back in the next episode.